I've covered what Yu-Gi-Oh! Would be like if it was a fighting game using the classic monsters, and it was a fun time for all. So when I polled my viewers on what I should turn into a fighting game next, a sequel to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Fighting game was the overwhelming winner. Since I covered monsters that were popular in the Duel Monsters era of the anime in the original video, it seemed only natural to cover monsters that were notable during the GX era in the follow-up. As with the last video, I'll be speculating how these Yu-Gi-Oh! Monsters would function in a fighting game, looking at how the monsters attacked in the anime, their effects, any spell or trap cards based around them, or simply their appearance. If something has claws, I'd expect some slash attacks. I'll be basing these potential movesets and mechanics on existing fighting game characters, which I'll mention or show with B-roll. As stated earlier, the monsters I'll be choosing had prominence during the GX era, both in the anime and the card game at the time, which includes monsters that were released in the TCG both before and after the GX anime. Finally, I envision this imaginary Yu-Gi-Oh! Fighting game to be like a tag team fighter, similar to Tatsunoko vs. Capcom or the original Marvel vs. Capcom, where you pick your team of 2 monsters or have a single giant character. However, as with other tag fighters, you'll then be able to pick from a selection of assists or abilities before the match that can act as an extra attack for your partner mid-match, or grant an ability that affects the health or strength of the fighter or their partner. Additionally, since this was an era when archetypes were now expected for new and classic monsters alike, a lot of these monsters will also have attacks that reference other monsters within their own archetype in addition to their partner's assists. Think of Captain Ginyu from Dragon Ball FighterZ. Now, with all that groundwork out of the way, let's see if it's a good or bad idea to turn Yu-Gi-Oh! Into a tag team fighting game. Elemental hero Neos would be a heavy brawler, but with a projectile. Since he was the ace monster of GX, he should be at Ryu status by being a jack of all trades who has moves to cover up close, mid-range, and full screen. However, I'd imagine him more like Street Fighter III Ryu, who was a heavier Shoto-style character. His moves are a bit slower than average, but deal more damage and stun the opponent more, leaving them open to be comboed. I feel you could even give Neos Ryu's collarbone breaker in the style of the Wrath of Neos spell card, or that could be a special move that brings him forward like the Tatsumaki Senpukyak. Another move that could have that function is Neos Force, where he has a chargeable punch that propels him forward like Shen Wu from King of Fighters. Charge it all the way, and it glows like on the card. His Shoryuken could be like when he does the jumping upwards chop in the anime, so maybe he could then follow that up with a strong diving chop if you use a heavier version of the attack, or enhance it with some meter. His main projectile would be his forehead beam, which he shoots out of the gem on his head. I could see it just hitting high or diagonally upwards or downwards based on the button command to make it a good single hit attack if Neos can't get in close. Some of those attacks could also act as his assists. Besides his regular assists, you could choose to have Neos Fusion as his special ability during the match instead of a standard assist. This would give Neos access to essentially a combo breaker, which will mirror its graveyard effect in the card game. You can banish it to prevent the Neos monster on the field from being destroyed. Since the card's main effect allows Neos to fuse, you can only use this ability in the fighting game after you use an attack that involves him fusing. Speaking of, his super moves would be where he calls in the other Neospatians for some contact fusion. The animations on the super move activations would be like Mega Man in Marvel vs. Capcom, where he calls in his robot buddies to combine with him to turn into the super jacked up Mega Man with all the projectiles. He can fuse with Glow Moss to create Glow Neos temporarily, and throw his lightning bolt thing as a super move. This would be a single hit giant fast projectile that eats up anything in its path. For another super move, he can fuse with Flare Scarab and Grand Mole to form Magma Neos briefly, where he throws his anime giant magma ball towards the opponent, also causing a big explosion like a throwable Kikosho. A third super move could be where he fuses with Aqua Dolphin and Air Hummingbird to form Storm Neos, where he creates a giant tornado around himself like in the anime. It would go really high up. And poor Dark Panther was left out of these super moves. Maybe Dark Neos could be an alternate costume. Same for Brave Neos, since that's a cool design. Finally, his ultimate move could be turning into Divine Neos and just filling the screen with his divine light. You better be ready to block or just get hit. The original elemental heroes were an iconic part of the GX anime and started off one of the biggest archetypes in the series of hero, all capitalized, so they deserve a lot of attention. While each one could easily be their own fighting game character based on design alone, Avian the Wind and Claw Fighter, Burstinatrix the Fire One, Sparkman does electricity, etc., for the sake of time and variety, I'll only give a few of them roster spots with cameos from the other classic elemental heroes in the Chosen One's movesets. Flame Wingman has to be on the roster, since he was Jaden's original ace monster. Wingman's attacks would use Avian and Burstinatrix as projectiles, since those are his fusion materials, so he would have Avian's feather projectiles that would be weak but fast and hit multiple times, and Burstinatrix's actual fireball that would be fast and can be angled but only be single hit. He would also have a dive kick, which would be a miniature version of his Skydive Scorcher attack from the anime, so more of a dive bomb, but you get the point. I see him teaming up with Sparkman for some attacks too, since he had that fusion with him. I feel like one of Wingman's attacks could have Sparkman jump out and surround himself with electricity like how Blanca does it. It could hold the opponent in place briefly to open up combo opportunities for Wingman while they're getting zapped. I could also see Sparkman being an option for the assist attack of Wingman's tag partner. Maybe he could use different electricity attacks as an assist character that aren't in the main Wingman moveset. Wingman's super moves were all seen in the anime. The first would be a full power Skydive Scorcher, with the massive flame effects and all. Perhaps he could even redirect himself in various directions as he's doing this move. Another super move would be where he uses his effect in the anime and blasts the opponent with a large stream of fire. His last super move should involve him fusing with Sparkman to create Shining Flare Wingman. This could work like Devil Trigger in Marvel vs. Capcom, where he's powered up and maybe has a few new moves for a set period of time. However, it should be like Virgil's Devil Trigger, where not only does he get powered up, but you have special access to a badass ultimate move only when in this form.
Rest in peace. Combo KO! You win!
Elemental hero Bubble Man deserves some praise. This man fought with bubbles over anything else the element of water had to offer, and came out on top. He's just so happy to show off his powers. Look at that smile. He even has the bubble water loaded in his chest thing. I'd imagine Bubble Man to be a zoner. Just fill the screen with all types of painful bubbles. Slow, fast, big, small, stationary ones to act as traps. Even add in that Rikuo bubble from Darkstalkers that holds the opponent in place and drains their health. I could also see him teaming up with Clayman, where one of his attacks is calling Clayman to sit in defense mode mid-screen to make it harder for opponents to get in. It would be kind of like Sub-Zero's ice clones. Similar to Sparkman in the last segment, I could also see Clayman getting extra attacks as an assist for Bubbleman's teammate, like doing a little rush. For super moves, Bubbleman pulls out his big bubble blaster and fires a giant fast bubble projectile, like your standard giant fireball super move. Another super move would be a counter, where Clayman jumps in front of Bubbleman, and if he's hit by an attack, they quickly fuse into Mudball Man, and a beam of sound waves assaults the opponent, like his anime attack. I envision it like a counter super move, since Mudball Man's main gimmick is just being a giant defensive wall. Finally, Bubble Man should have a power-up super move where he turns into Neo Bubble Man. In the anime, Neo Bubble Man's Bubble Blaster became a giant hydro pump of water, so this could be like Ryu's power-up super move in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, where his other super moves got vicious and gained different properties, just like Neo Bubble Man in the anime. The last of the classic elemental heroes to get a spot is elemental hero Wildheart. Look at how cool that sword is. It's so rough that I imagine it to be like Kotal Khan's sword, where he slowly but powerfully swings it for some hard-hitting combos. He should also have his Cyclone Boomerang, which would be his projectile. Look at how Jade from Mortal Kombat uses her boomerang. Wildheart would have some good high, low, and anti-air projectile options with it. Remember that one time it hit him in the face on the return? That was funny. Speaking of Jade, since Wildheart is unaffected by trap cards, he could have a move like Jade's Glow that makes her impervious to projectiles. Not sure if his equivalent attack should make him immune to projectiles briefly too, or if it should be a different kind of attack that's close to a trap card, but the idea is there. For his super moves, they should involve him turning into his 3 main fusions, which include 2 more classic elemental heroes not mentioned yet. He can turn into Necroid Shaman with Necro Shade to do a super spinning staff rush. He can turn into Wild Wingman with Avian to fire a beam of wind rings, probably at an angle, and he can fuse with Blade Edge for the ultimate move to turn into Wild Edge. This would be a cool cinematic super like in the anime when he fires his arm blades and then charges at you for one final slash. Since this isn't contact fusion like the Neo supers, I guess you could have a fun visual effect where the defusion card artwork appears on the monster when the super move is complete and he turns back into good old Wildheart. Cyber Dragon seems like a weird choice on the surface, but look at a character like Shuma Gorath. Cyber Dragon has to move around like him. He can poke with his tail for light attacks and use his upper body for heavy attacks. No arms needed. He would probably have to be curled up in a ball when stationary like on his alternate artwork to make for a more fair hitbox, but otherwise he can fight as naturally as he wants. His main projectile would be Evolution Burst, which would be a standard laser projectile that hits at an angle or straight depending on the button command. One of the beams could even come out of his tail instead of his mouth to reference Cyber Laser Dragon. He could also have a counter move that blasts the opponent away in reference to Cyber Barrier Dragon. One of Cyber Dragon's best traps is Cybernetic Overflow, so maybe Cyber Dragon could create a mini explosion around himself to represent that card, and it should be one of his assist attacks to represent its trap card roots. His super move should involve his fusions. He can turn into Cyber Twin Dragon and fire 2 beams for a super move. Maybe they can ricochet in different directions to make it very hard to dodge. Another fusion super can be forming one of the Chimera Tech monsters, and each head rushes towards the opponent in succession for the super move since they can attack multiple times in a turn in the card game. Cyber Dragon's ultimate move should of course be fusing with 2 other Cyber Dragons to create Cyber End Dragon for the attack. This should be a nice cinematic animation of the dragon charging in and then just blasting the opponent at a cool angle.
Lock and load. Hyper combo KO! You win!
Destiny hero Plasma would play like a giant Devil Jin or Firebrand. He has those wings and he likes to be airborne, so I could see him swooping in and grabbing the opponent. He's a brutal character, so he can drag them across the ground or throw them after getting a hold of them. He also has a mouth for a hand, so I could see him using tactics from the various teeth-based fighting game characters for his melee attacks. Since his main gimmick is absorbing the opponent's monster to strengthen himself, he can have an option where instead of a normal assist, he can prevent his opponent from calling out their assist when he's on the field to emulate him absorbing their tag partner. The trade-off would be Plasma won't be able to assist his partner if you choose that ability, but I think it sounds like a cool gimmick. Maybe it would only last for a set period of time during the match for the sake of balancing. Since Plasma is a Destiny hero, a few of the other Destiny heroes should appear in his moveset. I could see him calling Doomlord to hold the opponent in place for a second to mirror his temporary banishing technique, and Malicious emerging from the ground like Solomon Grundy's Swamp Hands to reference how you can banish him from the graveyard to summon more Malicious. Since Dreadmaster was treated as the original Destiny hero boss, one of Plasma's super moves could be calling in Dreadmaster to just wail on the opponent and go all Hulk smash. Plasma's signature attack is Vengeful Rain, so that could be another super move that works like Storm's Ice Storm, where the Red Death just bombards the entire screen diagonally in large chunks. For his ultimate move, it could be him absorbing you into his Wings of Hell for a bit, like a Chaos or Dark Dimension super move in Marvel vs. Capcom. Maybe the other Destiny heroes can even come out and rush the opponent before or during this attack, but either way, he'll be welcoming you to his personal hell for this extreme attack.
Welcome to my realm.
Hyper combo KO! You win!
There was about a 10-year gap between Cyber Angels in the anime and Cyber Angels in the card game, but I'll always think of them as a GX era archetype. Cyber Angel Benton seems to be the face of the Cyber Angels, so she'll be the main fighter. Her weapon is 2 fans on a chain. Those are prime candidates for fighting game attacks. She does all sorts of spins and jumps in the anime, so she could have a very Mai Shiranui or Katana style moveset, where they have a bunch of elegant movesets that put on a show while they're pummeling their foe. She would definitely have a lot of fan slashes in there like Katana. The other Cyber Angels can be involved with Benton's other moves. Dakini can come out and spin her staff like Chie's Persona in Persona 4 Arena. Idaten can run across the screen quickly when Benton calls her like Strider's Robot Tigers. Or maybe Idaten can come out and stand back while Benton charges at the opponent instead as Idaten powers her up like on the incarnated Machine Angel spell card. Perhaps even both of those can be attacks depending on where you want Benton to be on the screen after the attack's over, like how Chizuru's mirror clones can either leave her in place or bring her to where the clone lands in King of Fighters. Benton can also have a get over here style move with her chain, and one of the variants of that attack can involve Cyber Angel Natasha grabbing the opponent with her whip, like an anti-air grab. Natasha can also just do a standard whip attack as an assist for mid-range quick damage. Cyber Angel Izana can come out to help Benton in the form of a super move, where she does a multi-slash barrage with her axe and trident. Pretty standard style of super move rush attack, but always cool regardless. Benton herself can have a power-up super move that raises her attack and increases chip damage on blocking opponents. This would emulate her effect where she does damage equal to a monster's defense points. Her eyes would light up when this move is active like in the anime. Her ultimate attack would be a classic beatdown where all the Cyber Angels get together and team up. After the onslaught by the other angels, Benton delivers the final blow where she swings her chain and fan in the air and then slashes it downwards with force. Guess she has something in common with Ghost Rider now.
Face me! Hyper Combo KO! You win!
Armed Dragon level 5 seems like the best rep for the Armed Dragon line. We didn't see him as much as level 7 in the anime, but he's a good fighter size. His intro can be him leveling up from 3 to 5, and he has fists like a boxer. These are hands that have some wind up on attacks, but they hit hard and may have some armor. The fighting game term armor, but it does work as a pun. He has drills on his elbows. I'm sure he can find a way to use those. I'd imagine he'll be slow with his walking movement too. He'll be good up close, good at a distance, but getting in or away from the opponent requires him to use other tools in his moveset. His main projectile would be his roar. It just forms a standard red energy blast like in the anime. Another projectile would be his spike missiles. They have a short range but can fire multiple at a time to cover opponents trying to get in at different angles. I'd also throw in an attack where he summons a slow single hit but unblockable lightning bolt that generates above the opponent like Nightwolf or Rain from Mortal Kombat. This would be in reference to his upgraded form, Thunder Armed Dragon, aka Manjome Thunder, aka Chaz it up, Chaz it up, Chaz it up. However, his most intriguing attack would be the Ojamas. With Ojamatch giving these monsters synergy, Armed Dragon has a relation to the Ojamas beyond the anime. Armed Dragon could summon Ojama tokens on the screen as stage hazards for a move, where if the opponent comes in contact with one, they explode on impact to mirror their in-game effect where they deal damage when destroyed. They'll act as a bunch of mines to give Armed Dragon some coverage to more freely move around on screen. Maybe he can even have an Ojamagic counter move where it scatters 3 Ojama bombs simultaneously when the counter is successful. The Ojamas would also be involved with his super moves. Ojama Delta Hurricane can be a beam super that creates their giant butt tornado. Maybe you could even angle it with a button command. Another super move would be them forming Ojama King, and he does his belly flop drop like Hagar's body press. The ultimate attack though should be where Armed Dragon temporarily levels up to level 7, or even 10, or dare I say, Dark Armed Dragon. He can then fill the screen with his stomach blades. Perhaps he could even activate a nice cutscene where all the blades fly across the screen and bombard the foe.
Kulao wins. Fatality.
Yubel is one of my favorite designs, and I love their monster line. Yubel isn't much of a fighter on their own, though. They more let you fight them and hurt yourself in the process, or they just nuke the field. Obviously, we can't have that, but the main fighter would be base form Yubel, and they would just fight you with their wings and claws for basic melee attacks. I could see them having a move where they charge towards you while flying and then grab you at the end of it, followed by them burning your face as they have a hold of it, like what Yubel did to Viper before killing him in the anime. Yubel could also form illusions, so I could see them having a teleport or decoy attack to represent this. In the anime, Yubel could also force the opponent to attack, so maybe they could have a mind control stun move, or a move that pushes the opponent towards them, like Storm's Fair Wind attack. Since attacking Yubel's second and third form causes the opponent to take damage, and Yubel can't be destroyed in battle, maybe Yubel could have a move or ability that causes proximity damage to represent this. It could always be active like Noxious Reptile in Mortal Kombat X, or just a temporary power-up move. Yubel's big gimmick though is being able to summon a stronger form when destroyed, so this should definitely be implemented somehow. My first thought is to make Yubel like Dark Phoenix, where if you have enough meter built up and you're KO'd, then you get a new health bar and a broken amount of power. However, I don't want Yubel to become the most hated character in the game like Dark Phoenix was in Marvel vs. Capcom, so another option is to tie the ability to Yubel's assist. Instead of a normal assist, Yubel could have an ability like the Pandora skill from Street Fighter Cross Tekken, where you could sacrifice your teammate for a power boost with the trade-off that you lose your partner for the rest of the round, and you only have the ability for a set time limit or else you lose the round. Since base form Yubel needs to tribute a monster to stay on the field, this feels like a good parallel skill. Yubel could also have the option to sacrifice their teammate when initially KO'd to get a new health bar, combining their base form effect of tributing a monster and the concept of them upgrading their form when destroyed. Maybe to balance this ability, the second health bar could be halved, or their partner has to have at least half their health to activate this skill, but I think it could work out. For super moves, I could see Yubel having a screen-filling explosion to represent how the second form wipes the board, and for an ultimate move, they could upgrade to their ultimate nightmare form and attack the foe in cinematic form. What would they do? I don't know, but they're a giant two-headed dragon demon thing with eyes all over the place, so there's plenty of possibilities. Crystal Master was released in 2018, well after the GX era, but it's meant to be a summoner of sorts for the Crystal Beasts, and I think he feels like the best way to get all the Crystal Beasts into one compact fighting game character. Gotta thank a viewer for suggesting this monster for the roster. There's also Crystal Keeper, but I like Master better since I think it's a cooler design. Master's solo attacks would be pretty standard, just swinging around his staff. The main gimmick would be summoning the Crystal Beasts from the crystals floating around him. This would be a true Captain Ginyu style moveset. To take some inspiration from Strider Hiryu, Amethyst Cat could run out like his tigers, and Cobalt Eagle would fly in like his birds, maybe drop some crystal bombs too. Topaz Tiger can bite the opponent for a second to hold them in place. Emerald Turtle could be another Sub-Zero Ice Clone style impediment. Amber Mammoth could come out and stomp heavily for a slow unblockable Earthquake style move. Sapphire Pegasus could be a physical slash with the horn, and Ruby Carbuncle could set itself up as a crystal on the field for advanced combos or assists. Maybe if any of the beasts are hit a certain amount of times by the opponent when trying to attack, it could act as a Persona break in Persona 4 Arena, where you can't use them for a set period of time and they appear in the background in their pure crystal form like in the anime. For an ultimate move, it's gotta be the Rainbow Dragon. It would have a cool cinematic cutscene with all the beasts teaming up, followed by a heavy blast of rainbow. So when looking for a good grappler candidate, the Cloudians caught my attention for some reason. The main fighter would be boss monster Cloudian Eye of the Typhoon. Look at this guy, absolute unit. He's ready to throw hands with anyone.
I am ready to throw hands.
Were they ever viable in the card game? I don't think so, so let's make one a solid grappler. Since Cloudians are all about building up cloud tokens and fog counters, I could see Typhoon having chainable command grabs, where the longer your chain machines are, the more fog counters or tokens you build up. It could be like how Solomon Grundy's grabs gave him specific power or defense boosts in Injustice, depending on the follow-up grabs you do. However, instead of stat boosts, it would work like Dormammu's Liberation move in Marvel vs. Capcom, where certain combinations of the move allow for different one-off attacks afterwards. Depending on your command grab chains, you gain the ability to summon different Cloudians for an attack, like Acid Cloud can charge and explode at the opponent, Turbulence can summon a forceful wind that drags the opponent in one direction, and Nimbus Man can create a fast Raidenstorm. Of course, being a grappler, he needs some command grabs that target airborne and ducking opponents, but when he does those command grabs, he can have aesthetically hurricane-themed throws, like turning his body into a twister when doing the classic spinning throw, or putting the opponent in his mouth and then spitting them out with a lightning strike. For super moves, a non-grappling move can be calling out Atlas to act as a big projectile, like Dormammu's giant firebomb. The ultimate move, though, has to be a flashy command grab. I'm sure it can involve a lot of spinning. Zangief's been doing it with his command grab supers for over 25 years, so we know it's fitting.
Final! I'm coming! But
Ancient Gear Golem would be a giant character, as in, he has twice the size, twice the health, and no partner. This would be like Gold Lighton and RTX from Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. For context, it was a tag team fighter that allowed you to play as two standard human-sized characters, or a giant robot. They were slower, but still played like standard characters, only they take up much more of the screen. I could see Golem fighting like Gold Lighton, just punching and kicking as the gears turn slowly. Add in a powerful downwards punch for his mechanized melee attack from the anime, and give him a lumbering rush super move too, where he just punches a few times heavily in succession. The only projectile I could envision for the Golem is to have an Ancient Gear soldier hop onto the field for a few shots. The ultimate attack could call out even more Ancient Gear monsters, including This Dragon Will Shine for Eternity, with the Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon coming out to blast the opponent, followed by a massive punch from the Golem himself to finish them off. Dinosaurs need more love in the Yu-Gi-Oh world, and Tyranno Hassleberry was a fresh rep for the dinos in GX. Ultimate Tyranno was his signature card, and it has some lasting power as a dinosaur boss monster across its retrains. Ultimate Tyranno would be the rival of Ancient Gear Golem, being the other giant character who would get double health and no tag partner. Ultimate Tyranno is essentially just a cool looking normal dinosaur, so I'd imagine he'd play like the few other dinosaurs in fighting games, just giant. He can charge at you and bite at you like Riptor does, and have some of the legwork of Alex from Tekken. Also, give him a running dash like Kronika's dinosaur in Mortal Kombat 11 to emulate how he just charged at foes in the anime. His big mechanic would be evolving into Superconductor Tyranno. He would have a move that electrifies his body and gives it that metallic tint for a short period of time. It would work like Hakan's oil, where he has to keep reapplying it or else it wears off. With the electricity, he'll have better range and power on his moves, along with a projectile where he shoots electricity out of his mouth. Being in the conductor form also enables him to do his ultimate attack, where he turns into Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. He'll attack you with what he's doing on the Survival's End card, where he's letting out a giant electric roar. The Lightsworn archetype was the last archetype introduced in the GX era in the last TCG set of the era, so it seems fitting that they just make the roster. They may have never appeared in the GX anime, but Blair canonically uses this archetype in a few Yu-Gi-Oh! Video games. Lumina Lightsworn Summoner feels like the best fighter to represent this archetype. I could see her playing like Doctor Strange in Marvel vs. Capcom, where she has magical hands that summon all sorts of crazy magical items and other Lightsworn members to to give her good space control options. She is the summoner after all. She could have a move like Doctor Strange's Grace of Hoggoth, where she puts different symbols on the screen, and then when she does a specific Lightsworn blast, it ricochets off the symbols and has different effects on the opponent depending on what kind of symbols and the number of them on the screen. Certain combinations can summon other Lightsworn monsters to fulfill these effects, like Wolf to crumple the foe, Raikou to hold them in place for a second, Raiden to fire some projectiles, or Jane for just a powerful slash. I could also see Lumina having a special ability where instead of a normal assist, she can opt for other random Lightsworn members to act as her assists with unique attacks instead. They may be stronger than your average assist attacks, but they would have the trade-off that it takes health away from either Lumina herself or her tag partner. This would mirror how Lightsworn monsters need to mill cards off the top of their deck as effects. For super moves, Judgment Dragon. I would say it should be the ultimate attack, but since its field wipe ability was not a hard once per turn in the card game, I guess just a standard level 1 super where the dragon fires a beam or energy ball will suffice, though maybe Lumina could jump on Judgment Dragon's back alongside Michael the Arch Lightsworn, and they could do some cool stuff for an ultimate. Here's where I rapid fire some other monsters that I liked the concept of for a fighting game, but I didn't have a full moveset pictured yet. Ambulance Rescue Roid. I'd imagine he would fight like the Daytona car from Fighters Megamix, only it would have a projectile where it sends one of the mini Vehicroids as a rolling projectile across the screen. Freed, handsome guy with a sword. Honest, I could see him having a reverse ability of my Yubel idea, where he can sacrifice himself for the tag partner and power them up, however then he can't be used for the rest of the game. Master of Oz, let's give Chumley some respect. Oz would make for another good grappler with boxing skills. He could have that savage lift and smash that Big Koala had in the anime. And Red Eyes and Summoned Skull. They were the most notable omissions from my original video, and I wanted to acknowledge that they definitely would have made the first round of DLC in that fictional fighting game. Finally, I want to end on a suggestion from viewer UltraDragon16. They reminded me of Nurse Reficule the Fallen One, aka Dark Lord Nurse Reficule. This was used by the Academy's nurse in the anime. When an effect is activated that causes the opponent to gain life points, Reficule's effect instead causes them to lose life points by that amount. This is known as Anti-Cure, and I love this type of deck. I could never make it work in real life, so I wanted to see if I could make it work in a fighting game. First off, Reficule's main fighting style is hair manipulation in the anime, and that's one of my favorite video game abilities, so this character is perfect all around for me. To get to the gimmick of her moveset though, she would have a lot of moves that heal both her and her opponent, but to represent the Anti-Cure, she would have super moves that surround her in energy that causes moves that heal the opponent to hurt them instead, so it's vital that you use your meter to make sure those barriers are always up. As expected, they would have a set time limit before you have to use more meter to bring them back up. And for the healing moves, maybe they could reference Rain of Mercy or Burning Algae. I'd also say Reficule should have an instant kill move. This would be based around the trap card gift card, which gives the opponent 3,000 life points, unless you have an Anti-Cure card active. In the fighting game, if you have your Anti-Cure barrier up when you swipe your instant kill gift card, it annihilates the opponent. However, if the barrier wears off before you do the move, it will fully heal your opponent to show the risk-reward of Anti-Cure.
正中線5段付き
Now, what did you think? Did you like my moves and mechanics? What moves would you add to these characters? And what monsters would you add to this fictional roster? GX era, before, or after? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this concept, I've turned various other things into fighting game concepts, from Batman Beyond to fast food mascots, so check out those videos if you're interested. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.